Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I've read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's the author of the book Psychedelic Assisted Therapy, no other than Mr. G. Scott Graham.
Thank you, Daniel. What an introduction.
Yes,
That's great.
Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Scott, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Sure. So I am a career business and psychedelic coach out of Boston, Massachusetts, and I'm currently working on my 21st book. And the last three books that I published are focused on psychedelics. I have another book in the pipeline on psychedelics, focused on psychedelic engagement. And I'm a EMT. I'm a Tai Chi instructor. I'm a firefighter. I love to do Tough Mudders. I run a farm animal rescue, a not-for-profit. And in my free time, I write books.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing your books, your talents to the world, Mr. Scott. And what is the primary purpose of psychedelic integration method workbook?
Yeah, so the primary focus of these last two books that I wrote, which are the psychedelic preparation and psychedelic integration workbooks, they are both soft cover. You order them. There's stuff to read. There's stuff to fill in. You work on them prior to your psychedelic experience and after your psychedelic experience, because we want your psychedelic experience to be a meaningful, impactful event in your life, and not just something you're doing for fun or for recreation.
Impactful, people, impactful. So, how does the workbook support individuals in integrating psychedelic experiences into their everyday lives?
The piece that a lot of folks miss as they're getting ready for a psychedelic experience, and then after the psychedelic experience, is identifying the key learnings that they're hoping to get out of that experience so they can have a focused psychedelic journey, and then taking those experiences and turning them into action in your life. Lots of folks approach psychedelics as something that is just, some sort of magical thing. You sprinkle some fairy dust on you and you're going to do this psychedelic experience, and then you don't have to do any work. It's not true at all. Not true at all. Well, you don't have to do any work if you don't expect any results. But if you expect results, then you have to do some work out around it. Otherwise, why are you doing that psychedelic experience in the first place? And to be sure, Daniel, as we're talking about this, we're talking about the therapeutic use of psychedelics. People that are not just using them and going to a concert. People that are not just using them and going to a party. We're talking about people that have found themselves stuck in some way. They're depressed. They're anxious. They might have PTSD. They are struggling, and they've tried other methods. And those methods haven't worked for them. So now they've turned to psychedelics, and I want to make sure that as they turn to psychedelics, that they are doing purposeful preparation, and then turning what they've gained from that psychedelic experience into action that sustains them and keeps them unstuck.
So, Mr. Scott, can you tell us more about psychedelic assisted therapy?
So, psychedelic assisted therapy is relatively new here in the United States. There's only a few places where where you can get psychedelics legally. You can Google that. And it's changing. So rather than me dating this video and saying, well, this is where it's legal right now, just Google where psychedelics legal, and you can see where psilocybin is legal in the United States. Denver, some cities like Somerville, Massachusetts, it's legal, and it's expanding and growing, and may actually, with the new Trump administration coming in, grow even more, because Kennedy, who is likely to be the director of Health and Human Services, is very pro psychedelics and very much against traditional pharmacological interventions for depression and other quote unquote mental health issues. And so if this expands, there's going to be a lot of people wanting to do this. And these two books set you up to do it right. One workbook you do 2 months prior to the psychedelic experience. That gets you ready. It gets you focused. It's handled in stages where you figure out what your goal is, figure out what your intention, make lifestyle changes, including stopping drinking and other maybe recreational substances that you're using. Eat well, meditate, get yourself in the right mindset for a psychedelic experience. And then afterwards, checking on your intention and the learnings for a whole 2 months after that, so that you have a plan in place finally that you can put in place for 10 months after that. It's a whole year and 2 months that you'll be working on stuff from the workbook, and technically with me, because I wrote the workbook.
Definitely, for sure. So, what role does integration play in maximizing the benefits of psychedelic experiences?
Well, if you think about it, it's very similar to, I mean, pick an example that folks might folks might have experienced themselves. So you go to the doctor and you have a heart attack, and that doctor says to you, oh my gosh, your cholesterol's out of whack, your blood pressure's out of whack, you're smoking too much, you have to make some changes. Lots of people have that experience and don't make any changes, or they make a little bit of changes, or they say, you know what, give me Ozempic, or I don't want to stop eating this, right? They don't integrate those changes that the doctor has said from that experience into their life. Something happened, you had to go to the hospital, had an operation, doctor says, don't want to come back for another operation, you have to make some changes. The people that are successful in not getting another heart attack, not coming back to the doctor with more problems, are the ones that truly integrate the changes, so that they're not eating right because the doctor says so. They don't stop smoking because the doctor says so. That might be their initial push, but they integrate this into their life, and then that's part of who they are. And then those changes sustain. The same thing is true with psychedelics. You could have this great experience, have all this insight, and some people will do nothing. And then they'll scratch their head, and then they'll wonder why, and then they'll throw their hands up in the air and say, oh, I've done this now, and that didn't work either. Well, it did work. The trouble is, you didn't put it to work in your life. You didn't take the steps to make sure that it was sustained in your life. You missed the boat. You got the message. You learned what you needed to do, but you failed to do it. So integration means putting those changes in your life and then sustaining those changes so they are part of you, and you're not depressed, you're not anxious, you're not struggling with trauma. You've broken through those pieces and you're continuing to evolve.
You need to catch the boat, people. You need to catch it. So, how is the workbook structured to guide users through the integration process?
So the second workbook we're talking about this second workbook here, which is this is the integration workbook and this is the preparation workbook. They're both available. The workbook guides people through looking at their emotional experience, their psychological experience, their physical experience, and asks people to identify insights from each of those, as well as monitor changes over time. There's a journaling component. There's a meditation component. There's a reflective component, all tied into this integration workbook. After about 2 months, then you take all of those learnings and all of those guided activities that you've been doing in various aspects of your life, and then you turn that into a blueprint for change. And I guide people on how to create that blueprint, what to do, how to make it SMART, which is specific, measurable, accountable, realistic, and timely, so that they have something to propel themselves along. And I take it even one step further. After they've come up with their plan, and this is important, I think it's very important. After they've come up with their plan, they then go through another reflective exercise where the end result is a letter to their future self. So they, without going through the exercise on this podcast, they go through the exercise in the book. They think about the goals they want to achieve. They think about where they think they'll be. What kind of person will they be 10 months from now? If they do all those things, where are they going to struggle? Where are they going to succeed? How is it going to be? They think about who this person is in 10 months, and they imagine that person and then write a letter to that person. They then send the letter to me, and then they forget about it because they're busy with life. And then 10 months later in the mail, this letter comes back to them, giving them feedback, giving them suggestions. Of course, like anything, if you put a lot of work into it and effort into it and honesty and integrity and focus and you're aligned with your values, you're going to get a lot out of it. If you just write fluff, you're not going to get anything out of it. And I talk about that in the book to help people come up with the best blueprint possible.
Yes. So, what is the significance of integrating both psychological and spiritual aspect of a psychedelic experience?
If you think about this, for any of us, we are not just a one-sided person. For you mentioned, Daniel, psychological and spiritual, but there's also, emotional. There's also cognitive, in tech intelligence, learning things. There's also physical. And so it's about taking all of those pieces and coming up with a plan that's right for you. That's going, because some people may be more spiritual than others. Some people may be more focused on their own psychological barriers and what they need to do to intervene and go and break through that. And so after 2 months of kind of answering questions in each of those realms, you kind of have a phone number for yourself that's personalized, that you can dial into, and you can say, all right, this is what I need to focus on. Somebody else might come with a plan that's very heavy in spirituality, very heavy in meditation. Another person might have a plan that's very heavy in physical activity, exercise, hiking, walking, any of those pieces. I can't tell you what to do. I can guide you through it, and I do that in the book because each of us are, our own result of our own past experiences, past growth, past intervention, past strategies. And so some things work better than others. You figure that out in this second workbook.
So, what are the core principles of psychedelic integrations discussed in the workbook?
So as we go through this, the core principles are to identify what your intention was and be clear on what that intention was. The second piece is to identify what you've gained from that intention and what you learned from that intention and how you would like that to manifest in your life. And then the final principle around this is to make sure that you have actionable steps that you can say, all right, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do to nurture my spiritual life. And it can be as simple as, every morning I'm going to do 5 minutes of yoga. If somebody takes the time to do 5 minutes of yoga every morning for a year, they are going to be qualitatively different than somebody who doesn't. Just that little 5 minutes. So this book's about identifying those things and then putting those principles into action.
So, Mr. Scott, what will be your advice for those people want to try your psychedelic assisted therapy?
Well, you have this. My best advice is to buy the books. The books are priced. I think the both of them are like $25. And so if this conversation that Daniel and I are having spikes your interest, prompts you to think about, okay, I wonder if this is right for me, but I'm not really sure. These two books, ding, 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 are a great way. This one on preparation and this one on integration are a great way to kind of survey the field, figure out what might be right for you. If you're already working with a psychedelic coach or therapist, these will take that work that you're doing to the next level because there's structured exercises, questionnaires, activities to make sure that you're well prepared for a psychedelic experience, as well as ready to take those learnings and put them into action in your life so that your life sustains change.
Very well said, Mr. Scott. So, how does the workbook help individuals reflect on their emotional and mental state after a psychedelic journey?
We're talking here, folks, just about this workbook right here, and not the preparation workbook. This workbook here asks you to look at your emotions, look at your feelings, and we have journal work after journal work, prompts to get you focused on what happened to you emotionally during your psychedelic experience and what you can do to take that emotional management, if that's the components that are right for you, to the next level. I'd like to say a little piece about the preparation piece, because this is a really important piece. If you are not prepared for a psychedelic experience, if you just, make an appointment with some guru for, a month from now and stroll in and expect that that's going to have an impact on you, you're going to waste your money. And so you could get the second workbook, the integration workbook, and try to integrate those learnings, but you're going to have better learnings if you really put the effort to prepare for that. This workbook has a lot of information about preparation, has a lot of information about psychedelics, what you can do to make sure that you are having a safe psychedelic experience. We use the Trip Safe model, and that's explained in detail in this book on what you can do to have a safe psychedelic experience. We use pre-assessments in this book, like the psychedelic preparedness scale, to determine where you are and what you need to do to have a better psychedelic experience before you just walk in and take a psychedelic. This preparation stuff is something that should not be glossed over.
So, Mr. Cote, what will be your short-term and long-term goals in psychedelic assisted therapy?
My short-term goals was to get these two books published and get them out so that people have tools that they can use to better have a psychedelic experience. My long-term goal, I have a third book that I'm written. There's total of 4 books in this psychedelic series. My third book that I wrote, which was at the beginning of this year, was about MDMA and grief. And you can get that book also from Amazon. The fourth book, and this is a longer term goal, which I think most psychedelic assisted therapists completely miss, and that is engagement. Engagement is so important that I'm dedicating an entire book to it. You can prepare for something. You can put lots of time into getting ready. But in that moment, when you sit down to do whatever it is you're going to do, if you are not completely engaged in what's going on, you're wasting your time, you're wasting your energy, you're wasting your money, you're wasting your effort. I tell a story about engagement in the psychedelic engagement book I'm working on, and I also talk about it briefly in this book about preparation. And that's the story of this Olympic level athlete who is a runner. And she was running a couple years ago in the summer in Georgia, a 10K, which is, or 15K. I'm sorry, 15K. And so about 10 miles. She went to the Olympics. This is an Olympic level athlete. You would say this woman has high integration of running in her life. She's definitely prepared. She trains, she works with folks. She has coaches, she has nutritionists. She's placed in the Olympics. If you were to assess her around preparation and integration, both would be very high. She was running in the race. She was first. She was 1,500 feet from the finish line. She was easily going to win. But she lost her engagement in that moment, lost her focus in that moment. She was running first. She was running right behind a motorcycle, a police motorcycle that was clearing the way so that people would get out of the way and not be in the road while the runners were coming. Then it's approaching the finish line, and that motorcycle veered off to the right down a side street. This athlete, well prepared, highly integrated, became unengaged, disengaged, unfocused. She turned and continued to follow the motorcycle down the side road, off the course. And by the time she became re-engaged, turned around, ran back out to the road, and made it to the finish line, she came in third. Cost her $10,000 being disengaged. So engagement is just as important as preparation and integration. Psychedelic assisted therapists don't talk about this. They talk about get ready. They talk about what to do afterwards, but they don't talk about this critical piece about staying engaged. So my long-term goal is that this concept of engagement becomes just as important as preparation and integration. And what we see long-term in psychedelic assisted therapy is therapists, coaches, counselors who are helping people with these medications, we see them focusing on engagement and not just preparation and integration.
So, Mr. Scott, to sum up our discussion, what is the long term goal of psychedelic integration as outlined in the workbook, and how does it lead to overall well being?
Well, the long term goal is overall well being. The work that you have to do with both workbooks is taking that overall well-being and figuring out what you need to do to get ready so that it will manifest in a positive, impactful experience. And then after you've had that experience, turning that into sustained changes in your life.
Mr. G. Scott Graham, thank you so much for sharing your psychedelic therapy or assisted therapy. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your workbook?
Yes, you can get these workbooks at Amazon, and you can also find me by just googling my name, G. Scott Graham. You can see other works that I've done, the other 20 books that I've published, no, the other 17 books that I published, and I look forward to connecting with you.
Yes, yes, yes. People, let's support Mr. G. Scott Graham, because if you support him, more empowering workbook, more empowering books to come. So, Mr. Scott, thank you for your time.
Thank you for inviting me, Daniel. What a pleasure.
More to come, people. See you soon. You are most welcome to come back next year, Mr.